Hello, this is a video on your Unit 4 study guide. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. This is a long guide. I want you to go over it. If you look at the videos that I made for Unit 4 and the readings, you will get all the info you need to answer these questions. So I'm going to skim over this rather quickly, give you some of the answers, and the rest I expect that you can figure out on your own from looking at the videos, okay? So real quickly, some of the first questions have to do with material and non-material culture. And again, material culture is anything physical, like a car or food. Non-material would be a value, a belief, competition, the value of success or individualism. Now, the next couple of questions have to do with status and role. For instance, it says being female. Is that a status or is that a role? It's both. Female is a status. Remember, status is rank, and a role is behavior expected by virtue of that rank. So female is both status and role. And also in relationship to status and role, and we'll talk about this later on your handout, you have what they call ascribed and achieved status. And ascribed status is something you're assigned. You don't have any choice. Like female is an ascribed status. But if you were a nurse or a doctor or a sociologist like me, that would be an achieved status. An achieved status is a status that you earn through your own efforts. You have to do something. So ascribed is assigned to you. Your race is assigned to you. Don't pick your race. Your gender is assigned. Your age is assigned. But you do choose to be single or married. You do choose what occupation you want to go into. You choose to have children. You choose to be the captain of the baseball team or whatever the case may be. So achieved and ascribed statuses. Now, how do roles limit our individuality? Well, we mentioned this on the videos. Remember, I said people expect you to follow and behave according to your roles. Because remember, status is a rank, but a role is the behavior expected by that status. Yes, for every status, there is a role. Look at a few other questions on here. We also talked about something called a master status. Now, a master status would be a status that overwhelms all statuses. It's like when people think of you, that's all they think about. So if you were a convicted murderer, would that be a master status? I think so. Okay. Other master statuses might be certain occupations like being a rabbi or a nun. And remember we talked about there are other master statuses, people that are famous, people that commit serious crimes, of course, would be. Look again at that video on master status because that will tell you a lot. We also talked about something called role conflict. Remember, role conflict is whenever the demands of two or more roles conflict, and one role says do this, the other says do that. So when we're looking at role conflict, we talked about how to deal with it, and we said prioritize your roles, rank your roles, decide where you want to spend the time. That's how you deal with role conflict. Now, in doing that, we mentioned a method called looking at ideal and real role rankings. Look at the video. Remember, the ideal was the way you'd like to be spending your time. The real role ranking was how you're actually. Remember on the video, I asked you to look at this. I explained them, and I said you would compare these and see if the ideal and real match and why or why not. If they don't match, remember on the video I talked about what could be a couple of issues involved with that. So let's look at a few of the other questions that are on here. We also talked about such things as cultural wars and cultural lags. Now, on your Unit 4 thought paper, it's basically looking at ongoing cultural wars. And these are differences in society within mainstream society over what is acceptable behavior or values, things of that nature. And some of these are considered like old versus new ways, like should a guy wear a hat when he's inside a building? Should a man pay for the date? Things like that are old versus new ways. And some of it is over major issues like you had on your thought paper, legalizing marijuana, gun control. Is it okay to protest something by kneeling during the national anthem, etc.? Those would be examples of cultural war. Remember, cultural lag had to do with the fact that material culture changes faster than non-material culture, which can create problems because very often we're hanging on to old values and old ways of doing things, even though the technology has created an entirely different world. And now I'll let you think about that a little more. So let's talk about norms. That was the next topic on Unit 4. Remember, norms are good for basically promoting social order, telling us what to do and not to do. We had 3 categories of norms: folkways, mores, and taboos. Which one's the most common? I bet it's a folkway. Least common? Taboos. Remember, folkways are common everyday behaviors that we kind of take for granted. Like if I was going to sneeze right now, I'd cover my nose so I wouldn't get a moco on the camera, right? Because that would be gross, and I hope you're not eating right now, okay? If you violate a folkway, people think you're strange and odd. If you do it long enough, they probably will do what we call ostracism. They don't want to hang out with you. They will shun you because they think you're weird. Mores and taboos are different than folkways because mores and taboos are recorded. Remember we said that? They're formal. They're serious. And if you violate them, the punishment is going to be legal of some sort. It could be a fine, it could be jail, it could even be execution. And remember, I said that taboos were similar to mores in the sense that they're formal, they're recorded, and the sanctions are legal. But mores are something that we've all violated. Some mores, we've all violated some folkways. But I suspect hardly any of you, if any of you have violated taboos. Remember, taboos are repulsive, evil, things you should never do, things you cannot justify. That's a taboo. And that's what makes it different than a more, you might say. Now, we talked about 2 values at the end of Unit 4, and you need to look at the videos and look at them carefully. We talked about success, the number 1 value in American society, and said that success really has 2 components, okay? One, how it's achieved, and second is how it's measured. Success is achieved through hard work and competition. And we analyzed competition. We talked about the good parts of competition, that it's a great motivator. It feels good to win. You get respect if you're a winner. We talked about the negative side of competition, the stress of competition. You know, the fact that if you lose, you got to be careful, the lower self-concept. And we talked about dehumanization. You might want to look at that video and look at what we meant by dehumanization. Then we talked about how you measure success, and that is through job status and material comforts or consumerism. We talked a lot about material comforts and consumerism. Talked about the benefits of material comforts. Obviously, makes life easier, true, you know. We get new tech toys because we're always inventing stuff to sell you stuff. And we talked about the mentality of materialism, in which, remember I said, Americans using this mentality look at ways to exploit the environment in order to produce products to make money. Of course, there's a negative side to that. And that's when we talked about the negative side of materialism and consumerism. One of the major drawbacks was, remember, environmental destruction. And then we started talking about, and look at the video, where things become more important than people. Remember the question about, would you kill somebody to protect a lot of money? Look at that closely. Then we started talking about why people do that. And this is another negative side of materialism, and that is that we start thinking things will make us happy. How advertising keeps telling us, you know, we got to do this or we have to do that. If we buy this or we buy that, we're going to be happy. Advertising makes us dissatisfied with what we have because it shows us everything new and improved. And it says if you get the new and improved thing, you're going to be happy. Remember that? We talked about that as well. And that's a serious drawback. Then we also talked about greed. The fact that in order to get these good things, we always want more and more and more. And are we ever satisfied? So look at those videos again. Finally, we looked at individualism. This is this value where we're told to be unique, to express ourselves. This is basic American freedoms. And it's a value that allows us to have freedoms. And the good part is it's a basis for democracy. You need freedom of speech. You need to be able to say things and express yourself. It's good for innovation because we get new ideas. And we get the cult of individual achievement where people accomplish great feats. A poor person comes out of a poor neighborhood and they rise up to be very famous or the world's best doctor or what have you. We get people that accomplish great feats, you know. And we talked about that. We talked about the good side of this. But also we said there was a negative side to the cult of individual achievement. Remember we said that what happens here if we're not careful is we overemphasize it. And sometimes we do foolish things. We think we can accomplish everything. But not everybody can climb a mountain in a wheelchair. Not everybody can pull the same tricks that Superwoman and Superman do without getting hurt. Isn't that true? And also we said a problem with that cult of individual achievement is that we may come to a point where we think that people don't need help, that everybody can make it on their own. And we said people do need help because we all need help at some time. And that could be a negative side of individualism if we think people don't need help. We also said with individualism, you're going to get opinions. This could be considered negative, but it's an issue. You're going to get behaviors and opinions that you may not like if you give people freedom of speech. And you have to allow freedom of speech. You can't say you have a right to speak freely and then, but not really. You have to allow freedom of speech. And also we finally mentioned that these rights protect us and therefore can make law enforcement more difficult in the sense that the police have to follow the laws and have to respect our rights. So this is just Unit 4 study guide. Look at it closely, look at the videos, and you should get all the answers you need.